Do you know this feeling that you think you're doing something, but in reality actually you're not? Well, this happened to me this week. I was giving my breath yoga class, actually it was the second level. The first level we are doing practices to help to relax the breathing and to extend the breathing to a 3-minute breath on average. And it can be extended much longer. And then the second part is actually in trying to get into that state of being which we can call Tai in essence. And at the moment, when we achieve that state, then this is where we separate ourselves from the hallucinatic impressions from our sense organs. At the moment when we are doing breathing practices, then at that moment we're actually playing with a particular aspect of ourselves. And in this session we are going to talk about this, and we're also going to practice some things. And I would like you to practice this because this links to a large part of the Daoist program. First of all, the most important part is the idea that breathing is going to help you solve your problems. That is not the case. At the moment when you are doing breathing practices and you start breathing practices to regulate yourself, whether it's fast breathing like fire breathing, or it is intense breathing to create strength in your muscles or anything like that, or you do rebirthing, or you do any other kind of thing that is supposed to help you relieve your fears and tensions through transformational processes, this is just not going to happen. So when we are in this thing with breathing, we're going to delve deep into the psychedelic parts of breathing practices, and we're going to do some exercises, and I would like you to participate in that. But we're also going to smash some holy houses in breathing practices, and I would like you to forget everything you learned so far, because to be quite fair, the things that people normally learn as breathing practices, they are pushing you into sort of transformative process, and this transformative process actually is helping you to relive all your traumas and your tensions and your stresses, and it just ends up being addicted to adrenaline and dopamine, and this is not what we want to do. Let me first talk about some of experiences. Who of you is taking drugs? If you're taking drugs, what are you doing? You're trying to escape the reality as it is. The reality of as it is, as you can learn from taking drugs, is that life itself is more trippy than anything else. And the reason for that, says Taoism, is because our heart, which is the receptor of all our sense impressions, has to process all the impressions and has to make decisions on this. But our sense organs, all 6 of them, they are experiencing things and they are preconditioning it in the habit, in the response of our heart decides on things. Our internal sense organs, they tell, like, we don't really want to see this, and we don't really want to see this, and this is what we really want to see. So if you like to watch violence, or you like to watch porn, or you like to watch people suffering, or you like to watch the news, which is the same, or you want to play games and commit crimes that you would not be able to do in daily life, but that you can do into the game, like shooting people at random, all kind of stuff that we do. This is actually what is training our heart because of the pre-selection. It's the same how the algorithms from YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they all work according to the same principle. They are an extension of our senses and the extension of how we condition ourselves with our habits. As such, all spiritual techniques, they basically show that you should stop all your habits and you stop all your intoxications and you should stop all your addictions. You should stop all your drugs so that you can focus yourself on the trip that life itself is. And then at that moment, we have to learn to deal with it. Taoism says that if you deal with it, you become an immortal. Buddhism says you have to escape it and you have to become a Buddha, which is like a timeless being outside reality, more in a Platonic sense. Platonism is, of course, the myth of the idea that the life we live is illusionary, and then we break through a particular kind of barrier, we can see reality as it is. It is the Matrix story that everybody is keep telling everybody on the internet nowadays, where stupid myths like that the earth is flat and so on is all part of that. The reality, Taoism says, this is actually this reality that we are in. But our senses fool us and they put us on a destructive path through which we cannot really experience life in the best way possible. And as a result of this, we are going to eventually suffer more and more over time. We're going to age, we're going to be unhappy, and all kind of things happen to us. We make wrong decisions, and wrong decisions are very easy to make. You just have to look in your own history. You don't need science for that to know that it's like that. And for this breathing practice also, in a similar kind of fashion, you don't need to look at science. Science is wonderful, it's amazing, it's very important, and we can learn a lot of things from it. But if it is about our lives, science is not going to help us. And there is no way of freezing ourselves or taking vitamins or anything like that to eventually live longer. The only way to live longer is to hack our system just by experiencing ourselves. And this is where meditation, food medicine, and also exercise, for movement exercise, actually comes in. And this is our base package in the Daoist program. So if you don't want to study Daoist medicine or Chinese medicine, that's fine. You know, I love you to study this, but if you take the base package, then you have about 6 months training period to drill you through particular kind of processes, including learning how to healthily fast and so on a scientific principle. So it's not just a piku as the Taoists do it, because that is hard. I've done that, and I can tell you it's not for everyone. At the moment, when you are learning how your body actually functions, and meditation plays a large role in that, and breathing is a part of meditation, it is not necessarily an important part. And at that moment, you can start noticing all kind of things inside yourself, and you can start retraining your sense organs. And this is the whole purpose. In the Udang breath practices, the Daoyins that we do, we're learning to reverse our sense organs in their dependencies on the environment. This is an important part. In the I Ching counseling course, we are learning how to integrate ourselves with the directions so that we can live the Pakwa and therefore understand I Ching, Pakwa, and so forth and so forth. Astrology and Feng Shui also at the same time, because these are required qualities to become a master in these things. It's not just a map that you learn or a principle that you learn, like this is where you have to put your table. In the end, it's all in the heart, what happens there. The first lesson in breathing is that your breathing probably is problematic. You can see that on the counting of your breathing. At the moment when you're breathing, you are normally breathing more than one time a minute. Most people, they breathe every 5 to 10 seconds one breath, and that is an in-breath and an out-breath. And the faster they breathe, the more they need to have their mouth open, so that blocks their sinuses, and it is going to become more difficult to breathe. And as a result of fast breathing, you develop stress. According to Daoist medicine, a 3-minute breath is usually the best way to stay calm in your mind. And that requires you to shut down a lot of different kind of functions in your body that you don't really need. A lot of functions that you have in your body, they're only there to maintain the status quo. And the status quo for most people is stress. So in Daoist practices, we usually call fast breathing, that means faster than 1 minute per breath, we call hysterical breathing. And that is an indication of the trauma that people are reliving and reliving and reliving every day. So if you are breathing faster than once every minute, you're over the edge. When you are slower than 1 minute, you're going in the right direction. And I'm not telling you have to breathe 40 minutes in a breath. That's not necessary. It's not possible, because I've seen people do it. But it is not required. And at the moment when you are breathing slow, you will start noticing that all the functions of your body, they work fine. It's the same like when you are not blinking. At a certain point, you will start noticing your eyes are going to tear from the fight that you have, because you have all these inbred stress responses like blinking all the time. And as a result of this blinking all the time, you think you are holding your eyes moist, but at the moment when you are not blinking, the same moistness happens. There's a lot of prey animals that still are moistening their eyes without hardly ever blinking, and that is then not a requirement. And for instance, noticing the affinity aspect of reality, that means that the parts where we have to learn to connect with reality as it is, we are required not to blink, because every time when we blink, our mind falls asleep, and at that moment we are not conscious. So not a very good thing to do. So the first thing we have to learn, according to Daoist principles, is to learn how to do natural breathing. And at the moment when we do natural breathing, then at that moment we are learning to let go of all our tensions. And the base for that is usually Dantian meditation. Open up your body, open the 3 gates. And as a result of that, you will use the extra space that you just created with the in-breath, so that you activate your spinal column more. Part of your attention, of course, remains all the time on your Dantian. Your hands can just be relaxed. Breathe into your nose, breathe in and out through your nose. This way it's easier to control. So at the moment when you feel like, okay, I can handle this, that's great. But the first step that you want to take in breathing is just sit in your dantian and listen to your body and try to feel where the breathing wants to go to. The breathing follows its own trajectory, so sit for this just for a while and then pay attention. Hold part of your attention to the dantian, because that's the ultimate direction where the breath has to go to. It has to find its way from there to your dantian. It's the same like when you do the I Ching. You apply the I Ching, you try to follow the way to heaven, and you have to find your way through all the 63 hexagrams that are not heaven. Make sure your breath is always uncontrolled but thin. Open the 3 gates and just sit and wait and pay attention. Try not to count, try not to force. Try to feel how your body gradually scales down its effort to hold on to the position. And as a result of that, creates the opening and the space for your breath to go where it has to go to. At the moment when you get deeper and deeper into your meditation state, you'll start feeling the pumping of the blood in your ears. It will go like zoom, zoom, zoom. This means that you gradually become lower in your pressure. That's a good sign. You might also feel that your intestines are coiling, and you might feel that your spinal column on the outer side becomes warm, steamy. You might notice that there's saliva coming into your mouth, and that saliva has to be swallowed in small bits so that it doesn't cool down the heart too fast. So it has to come down, it has to be steamed up a little bit, and that drop of hot saliva has to come all the way to the dantian and contribute to the yang. the movement of the steam in the tumai on the spinal column is like hot clouds coiling upward. That is very often confused with the feeling of the Ida and the Pingala in Hinduism. It's the same principle. It's the yang rising to the top. And when it comes down, it doesn't make that kind of movement. But here, it is going to throb through your nose and through your upper lip until it comes into your tongue, and it will open up the hollow at the bottom of your tongue. Might even cause the tongue to vibrate in your mouth to stimulate the saliva. Then at the moment when it arrives back into the Dantian, it will help you open up your body more so that you gain something. So every cycle that you make, you gain a little bit more space. If you can do 9 cycles, that's great. It will take you about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20 if you're lucky. Dantian meditation is something that you do for hours and hours, preferably every day, but definitely for a long time. And the base practice, like we also have this course, is 100 days to help you settle your discipline. And that means that you have to put everything aside for 100 days to meditate at least for half hour to an hour to make sure that you settle your attention in the Dantian. You hear a lot of people talk about the Dantian, but when they haven't done the 100 meditation practice, you know that their Dantian is unstable, and that means that everything they do is not stable. It's not worthy paying attention to as a teacher. So as a teacher, it is important to do so. But as a practitioner for your own health, it's also important because you are transforming the yin of your body. That means the turbidity that comes from your food that is inside your intestines as poop. You transform that, you become more empty. This is where the food medicine comes in, because then at that moment you're only eating what you are required to eat to make sure that you function properly. You're not overeating, because that is also a stress response. So a lot of people, they eat a full plate 3 times a day and then they eat snacks in between. That's all stress eating, and you don't need to eat that much if your biological functioning is proper. And the problem is that science doesn't measure that, because there's not so many people practicing that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't eat at all, because that is not the case. If you don't eat at all, you're already a ghost, and that is not a good thing. Believe me, ghosts are not pleasurable to be around with. It is a skill in itself to deal with that. At the moment when you are learning how to breathe properly, that means that at that moment the Dantian is being shaped, and the Dantian is being shaped at the moment when it collects yang, and the yang has to be connected with heaven and earth. So your yang, the Ren yang, has to be connected with heaven yang and with the earth yang at the same time. And at the moment when they come together and they become yuan yang, that's the primary yang of your body. This is basically the sound, the ground substance of your body. And then at the moment when you start improving yourself, the first thing you start building from there is the coherence of your body, which in all circumstances can be called a jing. And jing comes in a yin and a yang aspect. The jing is basically the reserves of your body, like your fat tissue, the brown fat, and specifically your sperm, your ovary content, and so forth and so forth. So these kind of things, they're all part of, you know, the jing. But the yang jing is basically the activity and the integration of your body as a whole with your bones and muscles and your blood and your consciousness. Yeah, so at the moment when you develop your Jing, you basically set out the foundation of your health. And the root of that is in your breathing. And the root of that means that the breath is not done in the lungs, but it's actually initiated from the lower dantian in the belly. And at the moment when that is being done, that is the reverse of basically belly breathing. So belly breathing actually excludes you from your dantian. So not good when you do belly breathing. But the different chambers of your lungs have to be filled in a particular kind of way, and they have to be filled in a slow fashion, in a thin fashion. And at the moment when you talk about slow and thin, that means that you only breathe what you need. And at the moment when you start breathing what you need, then at that moment you start noticing that, oh, well, I'm sitting here, I start feeling this rotation of my dantian. And you can say, okay, I'm going to rotate my belly with rotating my intestines and my muscles and so on, but that is not the way. This is all artificial. It's the same like taking peyote or ayahuasca or taking heroin or cocaine or taking antidepressants or taking paracetamol. All these kind of things, they're all what we call crutches. They're helpful to an extent, but past that extent you will have to eventually learn how to handle your body. Medication, operations, all kind of other methods through which you actually artificially create a sense of release, they are on the long term not going to work for you. And it doesn't mean that you're going to become an immortal, because becoming an immortal, that's a whole different kind of playbook. But it starts with this. So at the moment when it happens, you're sitting, you're able to sit for a long time, you can feel that your breath is initiated by your dantian. That means that the dantian draws the breath down. You are not drawing the breath down. The dantian is breathing for you. And that is important, because then at that moment it is what is called Tsuran. And Tsuran means also at that moment that the yang is being activated and steams up the water of your body. And the steaming up of the water of your body is important because that steam is going through the dumai and it's going to circulate through your body. And it creates a typical throbbing sensation in your head. And when you talk about energy, you have no clue what you're talking about. Right? So there's no energy going through it, it is just steam. And when it comes to the Pai Hui point and it condenses on your head, it gradually comes back as dripping saliva, and it has to come to your heart, and it has to calm your heart, it has to cool your heart. And that cooling of your heart forces the warmth of your heart to go down and to mingle also with your dantian, so that the dantian yang actually also becomes more and more warm over time and is being maintained. So you get this circulation between water and fire in your body. This is basically what the small heavenly circle is all about, what people very often talk about. So it's a very simple practice. It requires you to become natural. This is what Zhuangzi talks about. This is what Lao Tzu actually also talks about. And many of the great alchemists, they say this is where it starts. In the interpretation, because of our attachment to science and form and principles and so on, in which we can translate this and explain this in a scientific way, we actually very often also deviate from the purpose. At the moment when we can do that, then that is the foundation from where we are building ourselves. It's the same like when you have a chronic disease, your system is crashing at the moment when you have a chronic disease, especially with autoimmune diseases. Your body is crashing, and because of the crashing, like also of the burnout and so on, you have to start rebuilding yourself from scratch, and you have to create a new you. So this is the same. At the moment when you learn this Daoist practice, you cannot just do a particular set of exercises and then hope for a good result. It will benefit you in some way, but what you're now doing, you're starting to reconstruct yourself, and that's the alchemical process. It's not just a changing of your chemistry, it is a changing of the whole essence of your being. You're going to upgrade yourself, and you're going to be a U.2. And I can't emphasize that enough. After U.2 there is a U.3 and a U.4 and a U.5 and a U.6, and there are other U points. That is the immortality path. So let's not talk about that. Then at the moment when we have done that, then at that moment we have control over the spaciousness of our breath, and we can slowly take more time for our breathing. And then when we do the directional breathing like we do in the I Ching studies, and we do the slow breathing like we do in the Wudang breath Daoyin, or in the Zhongwu Qigong, the thunder breathing. All these kind of practices, they are all then at that moment possible. And before that time, they are just going to be artificial and not going to give you the results that you're looking for. So this is basically what it is. So let's go do also some more practice with this and try to sit for 15 minutes after this movie is finished and try to hold your attention to your dantian and try to see how stable your mind is. Try to see if your breath actually is moving through your body, because what you will feel is that your breath will go in all directions, but not necessarily through your dantian. And that means that your breath, because of its stress, it is trying to escape its roots. And a lot of people, they have things like eczema, asthma, bronchitis, and so on and so forth. As a result of this, the connection between the lungs and the kidneys are completely broken. There will be some connection with most people, but the diaphragm might be tight, the lungs might be tight, the liver might be too hot. There's all kind of reasons why the breath is going to feel frustrated and not being able to do what it has to do. So if you're really interested in this pathway of Daoist breathing, then just connect with me and follow the classes, or follow the instructor courses, or both, or become a Chinese medicine practitioner, through which you have to go through all these things anyway. That's about it that I have to say. So go sit, practice for 15 minutes. Make sure that you realize after 50 minutes that 50 minutes is not going to do it. Because you first have to resolve all the stress tensions in your system. So practicing for an hour per day is therefore much better. And at the moment you practice 1 hour a day and you can do this 100 days, that's great. If you need help with that, I have a program for you to follow. It's not expensive. If you refer to this movie, I will give you a discount also to participate in that. And if you take all 3, I give you a really good discount, and it will be at least half the price off, because you buy a whole package. And I'm going to see you, talk to me several times every week, maybe through our WhatsApp group, or through direct connection in the classes, because you're going to get during this process all the open classes for free. And if you want, you can also sign up for our Daoist healthcare program, where I am collecting a lot of things for my PhD research. That is going to be a model for healthcare development on the basis of Daoist medicine. And in there is going to be the wilderness cycle, and there's going to be the aging cycle, with all kind of intelligent remarks from history of Chinese medicine about what you need to do in what phase of your life, and what kind of exercises then are very useful. And of course the references then of course are to our Daoist program. But I'm sure there is comparable things. It's just most people, they're not very systematic because they haven't really got much clue about the alchemy. And they are too much stickler on one particular text or one particular part. And I have just recently, for instance, confirmed the Shandong Jing as a translation, and I'm preparing a lecture about it. And I realized that a lot of the things that my teacher Liu, but also many of the things that my teacher Shifu Yao Shuande taught me in our private sessions are actually in accord with what it says there. And a lot of the Shandong Jing things go back to the Huangting Nei Jing, Wai Jing also, and they go towards the Tao Te Ching and other famous important texts like the Huangting Nei Jing as a whole. If you're really interested in that, I'm going to record my lectures for that. I'm going to do a trial lecture in Germany soon, and I am going to do a lecture on that in Romania. At least that's the idea about the Daoist conference, and I am preparing also, and this is part of the preparation. So you can come there and join that and have a look